What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. We have a great show for you today. I'm your co-host, Derek. Joining me is my buddy, Chase. How you doing, bud?
Good. How are you doing, Derek? It's great to be a host on the show with you, and getting to get this big is our goal.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I'm doing great. Just had to just before we recorded this, I did about 2 hours worth of recording beforehand for my other podcast. I actually got to talk with Kylan Granson of the Indianapolis Colts. So we were interviewing him beforehand. So that was pretty fun. Just doing a couple other Colts related things, but we're not going to talk about Colts here today. We have some more news, and unfortunately, we have more Deshaun Watson news. And, depending on how you feel about Deshaun Watson, these new details are going to either make you cringe or make you very happy. One way or the other, there's a lot of different news coming out here, Chasing. You and I will definitely dive into all of it. First things first, we'll talk about the first piece of evidence that we'll talk about is this is coming from Josina Anderson off Twitter, stating earlier that I'm told there's a recording of an interview. I'm actually going to share this just so that way it makes it easier for both of us to see and for us to give her the credit. So with this one, I'm told there's a recording of an interview with the adult son of one of the 12 women that the NFL interviewed in the Watson case, stating his mom initially was complimentary of Watson in her conversations after the massage, but later switched her account and tone after the negative allegation surfaced about Watson. The son intimidated his mother intended to reward his silence, per league source. There's a feeling that the NFL was initially cagey about details they learned from the woman's son. So, what this is basically insinuating here, Chase, is, kind of what you and I originally thought when we first heard some of the details was that, she apparently didn't have a problem with, based off of what her son is saying. Now, again, can we trust the legitimacy of what the son is saying? Now, again, he's an adult, so, there's no legal problem there. Just ultimately, if he was lying or not, I don't really know at this point, but, stating that this woman didn't have a problem with Watson until a bunch of people, started coming out against him. And not that she didn't even have a problem. She was complimentary of Watson. So meaning it wasn't just that she was quiet about him. She was actually saying how good it was to actually be able to be of his service. So, from one side, this is definitely a bombshell in this case that the NFLPA and Watson's attorney team is probably going to use a lot of in this trial.
Yeah. Looking at it, and you see Sue Robinson, the lead investigator of the Deshaun Watson incident, after the interview with Watson and the women just wrapped up this past Tuesday, they were ready to make a decision. But now with this new evidence that came out, they're pushing back the decision just a little bit more to figure out what it is. Now, to your assumption of, can we trust this evidence, or can we trust what this is? You can't maybe trust the boy or anything, or but he is an adult, like you said, and this is a recording. It's not like the recording is gonna, sit there and lie. But this furthers my speculation of that these women, or a lot of these women, I'm not saying all of them, because some of them could be telling the truth, but a lot of these women are out for money. Because if she changed her story because of everybody else coming out and saying like he did stuff, then that just goes to show you that, oh, I'm going to buy your silence when I get paid from this case of faking that I was SA'd by this adult male athlete that we're trying to, get indicted here. And this has been going on for way, way too long. Derek, do you remember that guy out of Baylor back in 2016, the edge rusher that got sent to prison for being falsely accused of sexually assaulting somebody?
Yes, I do remember that case.
Yeah. And this could have been another case that was going on where he could have been falsely accused and imprisoned for something that he may or may not have done. We don't know. But this is a huge break in the case and the evidence that is trying to be, brought out for
Mhm.
Watson. So, you know, it really just depends, but it kind of furthers mine and your speculation on were these women really out for the money or were they really out for justice?
Absolutely. And I mean, it definitely makes it very difficult because now you're really getting into the extremely fine lines of the NFL personal conduct policy rule. You're getting into it from a standpoint of the actual definition, breaking it out. Because, we talked about Robert Kraft before the show. We talked about how, I feel like it would be a double standard, right? To not punish Robert Kraft, but to punish Deshaun Watson for basically the same thing. Now, which one was more drastic? That's up for everyone's disclosure, but at the end of the day, it was still the same crime, what they were saying. So, it'd be one thing to get him. And then you and I also talked about how I think the NFL was the first one to bring it up, how they were saying how, they're trying to use what Big Ben did back like many, many years ago, where he reached a settlement with his accuser, and that was by the personal conduct policy was betraying the public confidence of the NFL, and that basically warranted 6 games. Now, obviously, if we're talking about, Watson's scenario, he settled with 20 of the 24 women so far. So, does every settlement regard a suspension in and of itself? I don't think it will. But at the end of the day, that's something to consider. But then you and I also talked about the fact that this is under new leadership. The trial in itself is being directed by the NFL and its lead investigators, not by Roger Goodell, who had the power at that time to make that decision, and which we talked about in the last show. Roger Goodell having the power to override his legal team and make a decision by himself, regardless of what his legal team tells him. He can't do that in this case now. So you have to go by the book and what the NFL's lead investigators tell you. And, if your lead investigators are telling you there's evidence coming out of this, I just don't see where this Big Ben Roethlisberger situation is the same thing as Deshaun's.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a fine line because, that happened like a while, like a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And, the CBA has changed since then. The personal conduct policy has changed since then. And like we both have stated, the, investigators and the person in charge has changed since then. And like we both have stated in our last video that we did, is if Roger Goodell goes back on and like takes over this, like if Sue Robinson decides to suspend Watson for 8 games, and Roger Goodell does not like that, and he decides that he wants a year-long suspension for Watson and steps in and tries to suspend him, that violates everything that you put here through with the CBA, which means that would piss off a lot of players and also the ownership. And it would also maybe result in the termination of Roger Goodell for stepping in here because the ownership may, all 32 owners may come together and be like, do we really want this guy going back on his word in a contract that he signed for the collective bargaining agreement? So it's his hands are tied either way when it comes to this. If he steps in, then it'll backfire on him and he could possibly lose his job. But if he doesn't step in, people are going to look at him as like, what is your job for anyway? Like he's going to get backlash no matter what he does.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the NFL is in a lose-lose situation here. Regardless, they either suspend him or they don't suspend him. I mean, it's kind of getting to a point where we're hearing the idea of a no suspension at this point because of what is being brought to trial. And again, this was another thing from Josina. The Sun's recording was later reviewed by Watson's side, revealing the aforementioned details, presumably illuminating why this particular accuser was not included with the 5 women the NFL ultimately focused on at the hearing. Said it was also told the NFL presented no evidence of violence, force, threat, or coercion in the allegations of the 5 women they focused on at the hearing before Sue Robinson. So that was also reported by Pro Football Talk as well. So, you're in a situation here where you're either going to have to suspend this dude, like they said, for a year, maybe longer, or you're just going to have to not suspend him at all. Like, you're really at a point where it's an extreme of one side or the other, because you can't, I don't think you can suspend this guy for 6 games, because at the point of, you're either have no evidence against him at all, or you got so much evidence because it's so extreme that it requires a 1-year suspension at this point.
I mean, if you look at it though, like that's just what the national media is portraying. They're saying a 1-year suspension because, that's what all of the fans and all of these other people and all of these, women that are mad or these, old people or whatever it may be. That's what everybody in the national media is saying. Not everybody in, front offices in organizations and everything. So what Sue Robinson may deem as a worthy suspension of 6 or 8 games, yeah, it may upset other fans, but that may be the, ideal suspension for this situation because, people are gonna want a suspension no matter what it is. Like
Mhm.
at this point in time, people are gonna, be upset if it's not a year, but they're gonna be extremely upset if he gets off scot-free. So as long as he gets some suspension, whether it be 6, 8, or even 10 games, I think people will be happy with that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's it for the Deshaun Watson news. Again, we will keep you guys updated if we hear more. But let's move into the former Browns quarterback that is now no longer on the team. He is now going to the Carolina Panthers. That's right. The Panthers are acquiring former number 1 overall pick Baker Mayfield from the Browns for a 2024 conditional 5th round draft pick. So it's not
So
even
stupid.
this next year, it's 2 years from now. And
So
then on
stupid.
top of it, that 5th round pick, I have been told, is with the conditional pick, is that if Baker plays 70% of the snaps, it will turn into a 4th round pick. Not that that matters either way, but
Ooh.
that's just that's the ruling of it. Chase, what was your
Ooh.
initial reaction to seeing Baker is now gone? You're the Browns fan.
I am extremely happy for him. I've had nothing but love and support of that guy ever since he came to this organization. I was the one that was defending him when all of the Baker haters were out there claiming that, he was not a top tier QB. I never said that he was a top 10 QB by any means, but, in the 2020 season, he was beginning to play like it. And I feel like if he did not get hurt, we would not be having this conversation about Watson because I feel like if he did not get hurt, he would have had a better season and possibly worked his way into a second contract. But ultimately, it really just depends on what Andrew Berry and that ownership deems of Baker because, like, I've always said that he reminds me of Alex Smith. He reminds me of a guy that could take you to the playoffs and win maybe 1 or 2 games, but he's not that quarterback that can take you all the way unless he has the perfect team built around him. And that's what it ultimately was. Like, he did a lot for this organization, brought us back from, a team that won 1 game or 3 games in the past, however many years, took us to the playoffs, won us a playoff game for the first time since 2003 and everything. So, and it's kind of funny now that everybody that is looking at this trade is coming out saying like the Browns screwed up. They lost their franchise guy. They lost, one of the better quarterbacks. And it's funny how everybody's, just shifting to, oh, now he's a good quarterback. Oh, now he's one of the top QBs. Oh, now he's, it's because he's off the Browns. Everybody had that stigma is that he's on the Browns. He's not that good of a QB, but his numbers were showing otherwise. He was putting up numbers that were rivaling Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the latter half of the 2020 season. And nobody wanted to open their eyes about that. But to me, I think it's good for him that he's getting a fresh start. And I'm sad to see him go. He did a lot for this organization. Watson is clearly a upgrade over Baker talent wise. We've shown, or he's shown that he can lead a garbage team to the playoffs and win a playoff game, and his roster's a lot more complete than what the Texans was. So Watson is a much better upgrade at quarterback than what Baker is. But I think that Baker is a much better upgrade over Sam Darnold in Carolina. And, it's going to be interesting to see where Robbie Anderson goes now that he's paired up with Baker Mayfield.
Well, I mean, Robbie was asked about that. Robbie was asked about that immediately. And he said that the reason he was so critical of the Panthers wanting to get Baker at that time, he claims that it was to stick up for Sam Darnold at that time. So do you believe that? I don't know if I believe it. It sounds like an excuse, but
it really is. It's kind of like the Tyreek Hill and Tua, or the Patrick Mahomes and Tua thing with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek is just sticking up for his guy and trying to make excuses so that way, the relationship does not dwindle and go bad. It's the same thing with Robbie Anderson. Like he's just trying to make himself look better than what it was, and have that persona of like, oh yeah, I'm a good teammate. I'm sticking up for my guy and Sam. I really think that he does not like Baker and he does not like the play style. And I think maybe it's because of the whole Odell situation and the way that Jarvis didn't get very many looks, in the latter half of the season last year.
Suggesting that. I think you're right in suggesting that. I didn't even really think about it until now. I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, everyone kind of looked at Jarvis and OBJ like, these are two stud wide receivers, and now both of them are off of the Browns because, they didn't want to play with Baker Mayfield. I mean, OBJ went bad when he went to the Browns. I mean, he went to the Rams.
And it's funny, Derek, how he is now like more open to coming back to the Browns now that Watson is there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, of course. You want to catch the ball from Deshaun Watson. Of course you do. I mean, at the end of the day, I think everyone agrees that, Carolina got Baker for really cheap. I know I mentioned to you and Josh several times that, I was surprised that the Browns even got a fifth or what could be a fourth. I'm surprised they even got that. But then at the end of the day,
they could have got more.
Needed something to do. Carolina needed something. They obviously Baker is an upgrade from Sam Darnold. And, I think that he's going into a great situation. He's got some potential really good players on that offense. And you stated it before as well that, Matt Rule and this GM that they have right now, that trade needed to happen to give Carolina some hope as to where this team is headed. They needed something to be able to boost them. And obviously they didn't expect Sam Darnold to really be that answer. So it's going to be interesting.
I mean,
so week one, I do want to know from you, the Carolina Panthers play the Browns week 1. Who wins that game?
I'll give you an answer in just a second. I want to backtrack just a little bit here because Dave Tepper, the owner for the Panthers, is not a very patient man. He is a business guy. He bought the team from the previous owner after that 2015 Super Bowl loss. And, he immediately wanted to come in and have success. And that's why he hired Matt Rule, because he thought, he changed around Baylor. He could change around the Panthers and everything. And, obviously your quarterback play has been subpar with Cam Newton, reaching the latter half of his career. And then you have Sam Darnold thinking that it could be a revival coming from the Jets and getting rid of that Adam Gase situation. To me, to be real honest, I think that if Sam Darnold was put into a better situation to start with and not paired up with Adam Gase, he might have a different career than what it is. I mean, it's still, wishy-washy right there. But looking at it, back to what I was saying in the last video, with the class that I'm taking, called Sports Management Worldwide. It's a scouting and GM class. And the former scout or the former scout of the NFL, who is my instructor, had informed me that he's got friends in the NFL that are scouting for the Ravens, the Colts. He even knows Chris Ballard personally as one of his better friends. And he's been hearing from a lot of league sources and people higher up in the organizations that if Matt Rule did not win this season, and they did not find a way to get or make a big splash in the quarterback market, then they would potentially be losing their jobs, both the GM and Matt Rule and the coaching staff, because Dave Tepper was getting impatient. And I think that, Carolina was desperate to find a quarterback, will it be Jimmy G or will it be Baker? And I think that the Browns still held the cards in their hand, because if, Matt Rule was that desperate to, have a winning season, they would have offered more for Baker. And I think that the Browns could have held on to him, because, what's he gonna do? He either sits out and gambles trying to get a bigger contract next year, or risks his chances being a backup, or stay and play when Watson gets suspended, ball out, and then go back next year and get a bigger contract and get a chance to start somewhere else. But back to your question, I think the Browns still win this game.
Okay. Saying the Browns win this game. I will admit, I still don't agree with you in the fact that the Browns still held the cards. I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, they had the rights to Baker. So obviously, whatever happened with Baker, it was just going to end up being, whatever. But, at the end of the day, Browns get to take $5 million or whatever off of that salary cap now, which is now added to their already top of the NFL and cap space move as is. So, at the end of the day, of course, they get to hold on to him, and they didn't really care at the end of the day. But, Baker stated he did not want to play for them at all anymore. It didn't matter if Watson was playing or not. He said, I'm done. I do not want to deal with you anymore. Get me out of here. I'm tired of this. And, at the end of the day, that's why when the news first came out of Baker, it's why nobody wanted to go and get him, because it's so much easier to, if they had announced that they were trading Baker before they went and got Watson, then they probably would have gotten a second or third round pick easy this year, because of the potential of that. And early in the QB market, because there were a bunch of teams that needed them. Obviously, Carolina and Seattle are really two of the only teams that really needed a quarterback still. And, did Carolina need him? No, they didn't need him. Obviously,
yes, they did. Sam Darnold
him.
Was not going to win them games.
Well, of course they weren't going to do anything spectacular with him, but I didn't think that Baker's going to take him to the promised land either. You didn't need Baker Mayfield, but you wanted him because you felt that you could win 2 or 3 more games with him at quarterback, which could give you the opportunity to win go to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game. That saves your coach and your GM from having to get fired. And then it makes you think, okay, if we get a decent quarterback, then obviously this team is headed in the right direction.
You can win 5 or 6 more games with Baker with that Carolina roster. I mean,
how many?
You got an
look, Baker is not getting them to 12 wins. Okay, they're not doing that. They're not winning 12 games with Baker Mayfield as quarterback. They're not.
Okay, your whole argument, I get where you're coming from, but the reason why Baker was not picked up sooner, it's a totally different reason. Now, the thing is, he look at what he did with Cleveland. If he had put up those same numbers last season that he did in the 2020 season, there would have been more suitors for him. But the reason why is because of that shoulder injury. It's the same thing as Jimmy G. Nobody's jumping on Jimmy G, and nobody's jumping on Baker because of that shoulder injury. They were scared to take a risk and risking a second or third round pick for him, because they didn't know what they were going to get with that shoulder injury. I don't think it's more about the salary and everything like that, or what he could have done. But I know that with Baker, you could have won at least 4 or 5 more games with them.
And I don't think the injury thing is a problem for the teams. I mean, Jimmy G was different. Everyone was wanting to talk about Jimmy G before they realized he had to have shoulder surgery. It was different from Baker, because Baker's healthy now. Baker had his surgery. He's going to be healthy for training camp. We don't know what Jimmy G is going to look like, and he's not even going to be fully ready for training camp when it starts. It's a completely different injury scenario. It's a completely different scenario. Now, again, I agree with you that the Carolina Panthers really wanted him. I didn't think they needed him, but I definitely think they wanted him. And especially for if you're only giving up a potential 4th round pick 2 years from now, then of course you're going to take the guy because he's going to win you probably 3 or 4 more games than what Sam Darnold would probably get you. You at least feel more competent and feel like your team is going to at least be more competitive in these games than with Sam Darnold. Now, you mentioned Jimmy G. I want you to tell the viewers here what you were telling me last night. Now, say Watson gets suspended for the year. What did you say the Browns would most likely do?
As a Browns fan, I've done a lot of research on this, and I think that one of the big things that have been coming up in a lot of talks with so many people is whether or not the Browns would trade for Jimmy G. And I am a firm believer that if the Browns know that Watson's going to get suspended for a year, or when it officially comes out that he's suspended for one full season, I think that they are going to throw all their cards in a basket and trade for Jimmy G. It may take a player and a couple late round picks. It may take a few late round picks. Who knows what it'll take? But I know that San Francisco would be glad to get out underneath that salary cap mess. We've got the money to sign him right now. And I think that if you bring Jimmy G to this roster, he is a much better upgrade than what Jacoby Brissett is. And he's got playoff experience. He's got Super Bowl experience. And, he could probably take you all the way if, we catch fire at the end of the season. But I think that if Watson's suspended for a year, Jimmy G is on the table because he's got 1 year left on his contract. We could trade for him for a few late round picks, let him play out the rest of his contract this year. We have a suitable starting quarterback. And then when Watson comes back the next year, we let him play out his contract and play for Cleveland. So I think that that's the move, and that's in the cards for Cleveland, but they're waiting to see what happens with Watson.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem I have with it is just the trade compensation. Like what all would you be able to give up? Because obviously the 49ers were looking for a 1st round pick for Jimmy G. Now, obviously with the shoulder injury and, not being fully ready for training camp, you could probably settle it back. And if you
couldn't get a 1st rounder or 2nd rounder for Baker, you ain't gonna get a first.
Yeah, I mean, you could
get
probably convince them to give up a 3rd round pick for Jimmy G, or maybe even a 2nd at some point if that's just all that they're willing to give up. Now, I think the biggest thing for them, for the 49ers, what they're looking at is the salary cap hit, like being willing to take most, if not all of that contract. That's what would be the thing. Now, we're talking about yearly cash and all of incentives and everything else, then Jimmy G would be worth $25.6 million this year. Now, could you say that maybe the 49ers would ask you to take like 20 million of that? Then, okay, fine. You guys just cut half your cap space, but you know that you at least have a quarterback that is competent. You guys can win games with him, and you'll probably still make the playoffs regardless, just because your roster's that well built. I mean,
and that's money they can put towards Debo. That's money they can put towards Debo. So, freeing up the 20 million or even 25 million, I'm guarantee you, if the Browns said that they wanted to trade a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick for 2023, and then a 5th or 6th round pick for 2024, and then they offered to take that entire contract off of their hands, I guarantee you San Francisco would jump on that in a heartbeat, because that they are worried that Debo would leave, and that's money that they could pay him now to stay on the team and help out Trey Lance.
Yep, I feel you on that. All right, let's get into a couple other things here in the NFL before we get to our other big topic of top 10 running backs in the NFL. Eddie Goldman, former defensive end for the Bears, now signing with the Falcons. Justin Houston is returning to the Ravens on a 1-year deal. Sandra Morgan's named the next Raiders team president, first Black female president in NFL history. So that's a landmark there. Then the other thing that we had was Von Miller said in a press conference recently, when talking about his offseason ventures and what he might have potentially done, he said that him and the Cowboys were pretty much mutually in like coercion with each other. They said, I was this close to signing with the Cowboys, but said that obviously the Bills came to him with a bigger contract, a much bigger contract. And then he said if the Cowboys would get closer to that, then he would have taken the chance to go back home to Texas to play with the Cowboys. I mean, what do you think? Do you think the Cowboys botched this, or do you think this is just a whole lot of nothing? I mean, obviously that contract for the Bills was a big one.
Yeah, I don't know if that contract is worth it or not. Especially for a guy that's like pushing, his mid-30s, but like, Von Miller is still one of the capable edge rushers in this league, and I think the Cowboys did botch it, but I think that Von was also looking at, what they had as a roster and, who's more built to win a Super Bowl and more capable of it. Because, you look at the Cowboys, yes, they had Micah Parsons. Yes, they got Diggs, and yes, they got Lawrence. They would have Lawrence opposite of Von. But you look at the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen is a much better quarterback than Dak Prescott, in my opinion. They've got a great head coach that has been established in this league and has taken the Bills to the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor, mind you. And not to mention, like, their defense is nothing to laugh at either. They've got Micah Hyde, they've got Jordan Poyer, they've got Tre'Davious. Thank you, Tre'Davious White. And they just they just drafted Kaiir Elam. And not to mention, they've still got like Ed Oliver and a few solid pieces on that defensive line.
Yeah, their team is well built.
So I feel like that Von, either way, it would have been a good choice for him. But I think that he made the right call in going to the Bills because they are more champion ready than what the Cowboys are.
Yeah, I know. It just seems funny. Like, oh, you would want to go to it kind of throws a little dirt on the argument that he originally stated as to why he went to the Buffalo Bills, right? Saying, oh, I wanted to go to a team that was ready to compete for a Super Bowl right away, right? Now, I mean, it's funny because I believe that to an extent, but then why would you pick the Cowboys? Why would you even entertain the idea of the Cowboys? I'll tell you why. Because they were going to pay that man $80 to $90 million before. If he was saying if they would have gave him $100 million, then he would have potentially gone. But obviously they didn't want to do that. So there's that at the end of the day.
Not to mention having him on the defensive line with DeMarcus Lawrence and everything kind of would have been a big deal and made that Cowboys defense a lot better. So, but it's all about Dak. Like, Dak folds in the high situations.
I'll tell you this.
In the pressure.
I'll tell you this. Von Miller would have outperformed DeMarcus Lawrence by a long shot.
Yes, I would.
Because,
I 100%
because
agree.
Lawrence has not been good since 2018. He has not been good since 2018. Literally over the last 3 seasons, he is combined for 14 and a half sacks.
But can you also make that
paid
argument?
$100 million a year.
But Derek, can you also make that argument that if he had somebody opposite of him, he would be doing a lot better? Because it's kind of like the argument.
I get that argument. Yeah, you definitely could do better, but you're getting paid $20 million a year, and you're averaging 5 sacks. Like, come on. I mean, Quiddy Pay, like DeForest Buckner, a defensive tackle for the Indianapolis Colts, mind you, is the second best, my opinion, the second best defensive tackle in the league, got 8 sacks last year with no defensive line help. Nothing. Now, of course, Micah Parsons takes the edge on DeMarcus Lawrence, but Micah Parsons was a rookie, man. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence has been in the league for almost 10 years. Like, yeah, but you're telling me you can't perform at the same level of a Micah Parsons who's a rookie? Come on.
Yeah, you could have that argument that the age is getting there, but like Von still performs. But the thing is, like, it's kind of like the argument with, look at Myles Garrett. He gets double and triple teamed all the damn time. Why? Because he's got nobody else on the defensive line to do it. But the thing is, he still gets the sack. But that could be the same argument for DeMarcus Lawrence. He gets double and triple team, but there's nobody to take the pressure off of him.
DeMarcus Lawrence just quit playing when he got paid. He got paid that big contract. He had 14 and a half sacks in 2017, had 10 and a half sacks in 2018. Gets paid. He ain't even cracked 7 sacks in a season up to that point. He does not. He chased that money. He got it, and he freaking ran off with the production, dude. Could you imagine paying a guy? Could you imagine paying a guy $100 million over 5 years and say you're going to repay me by giving me 5 sacks? 5?
Do you think that will happen to Von now that he got the bag? Do you think that he will drop his stats a little bit?
I definitely think he's on the back end of his career and he's coattailing off of a already well-built roster. Do I think he's going to be as good as he was last year? Of course I don't. Of course I don't. I think the age is going to catch up to him at some point. And, I think he definitely wants to play, and I definitely think he's still going to get his, but he's not going to be anywhere like what he once was. Not even close. All right, let's talk about another defensive lineman here that might be a little bit more interesting. So Robert Quinn on the Bears. There have been teams that have reportedly been out trying to trade for him. Now, the leading contender at this moment, from what I've been told, is the Kansas City Chiefs. And that scares the hell out of me because Robert Quinn, he has been in the league for 10 years. He has been in the league for over 10 years. This guy has had double-digit sacks in 5 of those years. And in 2 of those 5 years, had over 18 sacks. He had 18 and a half sacks just this last year. I mean, this is a guy that in 2020 didn't play a whole lot. He got injured, but in 2019 with the Cowboys, he had 11 and a half sacks. Went and chased the bag with Chicago, got injured the first year, came back, had his second best year of his career. And he's 32 years old. There is a lot more in this guy, I think. And, I mean, how hot do you think the trade market is for Robert Quinn right now? I mean, the guy did have 18 and a half sacks. He led the NFL last year.
It really just depends. Like, with Von Miller, he's got the name, he's got the resume, Super Bowl MVP, two-time Super Bowl champion now. And, he's 32 years old, but like his numbers aren't near what Robert Quinn's is. And like the thing is, it's depending on, do you really want to gamble with somebody like that? Or do you want to have him produce the numbers? Like it is a gamble because if he gets traded, is he going to put up the same numbers that he is putting up in Chicago at 32 years old? It's not. And people thought the same thing with Melvin Ingram. Like, oh, he did very well with Joey Bosa over in Los Angeles, and then you have the Steelers go get him, and he doesn't do diddly in Pittsburgh, and there are guys that's a team that's great at developing defensive talent. So it really just depends. I think it's more risk than it is reward because there's been a lot of situations where good players have had great careers going to different teams, and then there's some that have had their careers fall off going to different teams. So this could be one of those situations.
Absolutely. I really hope he does not end up on the Chiefs because if they get another good piece on that defensive line, I'm going to lose my mind. All right, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and they don't need any more help, man. They're already good enough as is. Stop it.
George Karlaftis, Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie, and Justin Reed.
You know what? If Jadeveon Clowney didn't already get re-signed for you guys, I would have thought that you guys probably would have tried. Because y'all got the cap space to be able to do it.
I wouldn't be shocked if we still are. I mean, we're still in talks.
I know. There ain't no way. There ain't no way. I'm just saying.
Derek, you say that now, but it could be possible.
It ain't no way.
You never know. Andrew we trust. And Barry we trust.
Whatever. All right, let's move on here. Top 10 running backs in the NFL right now. Now, do you want to do this from 1 to 10 or do you want to do this from 10 to 1?
We will do this from 1 to 10. Now, I also want to start off and say, are we counting Barkley and CMC?
Wait, what's up?
Are we counting Barkley and CMC? Like, we know what they're capable of when they can perform.
Yeah, I mean, if you think they're top 10 running backs, then put them in there. Yeah, do it.
Okay. It's I think that even minus their injuries, I still think that they are the caliber of a top 10 top 10 running back. Like, yeah, you may say like, oh, well, CMC's, you know, glass and gets broken every year, and same thing with Saquon Barkley, but like, the thing is, we've seen these guys perform, we've seen what they could do, and we know what they're capable of. So I don't know. I'll have you go first, Eric. You go ahead, start off with number 1 and head off to 10.
All right. I don't think I need to really tell you because I think I've already spoken it to you several times. Jonathan Taylor is the best running back in the NFL right now to me, just based off what we saw last season. Had 330 carries for over 1,800 yards, had 40 receptions for almost 400 yards, and had 20 touchdowns at the end of the season. I think he really just goes to show you he is the ultimate package of being able to run through people, hit with power, has speed, unlike most running backs in the NFL. And for a guy that weighs 220 pounds, it's just incredible the speed that he has. I mean, any of the running backs that you put right here on this lineup, Jonathan Taylor's faster than all of them. And, he's one of the best at breaking tackles. There's a couple other guys in here that we'll definitely mention in there. But I just think when you look at it from an endurance standpoint as well, I mean, the workload he had to deal with last year and was doing it on a consistent basis, I think just really goes to show you what he's capable of. And the fact he's only going into his third year. Like, I mean, he's only going into his third year and he's already this good. And I could only imagine with a semi-competent quarterback now and Matt Ryan, who may be able to take some of that pressure off him late in the season where Carson Wentz couldn't because teams started catching on at the end of the year that the Colts were going to run the ball 30-plus times with Jonathan Taylor. I think now you're going to see a few less rushes per game for Jonathan Taylor, but you're going to see a much fresher and healthier Jonathan Taylor at the end of the season. I think from a do-all standpoint, I just think Jonathan Taylor's number 1 for me.
Okay.
Can I take a guess at who your number 1 is?
Who?
I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say it's
Okay.
Nick Chubb.
No, because I'm not biased.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Who is number 1 for you?
It's really, really hard for me to say this, and I've been a guy that has been yelling nonstop for saying this and everything, but I'm either putting Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor at number 1.
You have to put one or the other. You can't go back and forth with it. You have to pick one or the other, and there's a correct answer to this. You know it. There's a correct answer. Come on. Let your bias come out for just a minute. Just a minute.
What?
Let your bias about Derrick Henry come out just for a second, okay? We know you all hate Derrick Henry. Just let it come out for a second, okay? Come on, help me out here.
I'm gonna go JT at number 1. But I will say this, Nick Chubb has that argument for one of the best backs in the league, or even the best, because with the numbers, I'll throw out some numbers here, that people don't realize, and anybody that's going to watch and Derek, this goes to show you how many people hate the Browns or really don't think that players are that good, because there are people that still think Nick Chubb is not even a top 5 running back in this league at this point in time. And I think it's because he plays for the Cleveland Browns. I really think that.
Those people are dumbasses.
because like, to be real honest, like, what better resume does he need to put in front of you for you guys to not count him as top 10? I mean, his first year in the league, he played 9 games because he was, they had Carlos Hyde as the lead back that year, and then had Nick Chubb as the second back. And then when he started taking off, they put him as the lead guy. He started 9 games and finished with almost 1,000 yards. He was 4 yards shy of 1,000 his rookie year. And then the next year, he finishes with 1,500 yards and 50 yards shy of Derrick Henry for the rushing title. Like, how do you not
get back
do
to
that?
Jonathan Taylor here, okay? We're talking. We can talk about Nick Chubb in a minute. Yeah, I know you're going to talk about him. Just give me the reason why JT's number one.
I'm putting JT over Derek. And frankly, Derek is third on my list. Okay, he's
Okay.
third. I'll give you that. I'll give you a sneak peek into my list. But JT is what you look for in a running back. He's got the explosiveness, he's got the quickness, he's got the way that he shimmies and shakes when he's got the ball, the way that he gets out of tackles and everything. And my guy has led the league in broken tackles every year since his second year as a starter. But he's one of the guys that are up there, and I think that his workload has shown it for him. But I think that he's also in that argument, like, oh yeah, he's been a guy that has gotten more carries with a run heavy offense and blah blah blah. You can make those arguments all you want, but he's also a great receiving threat out of the backfield. Now, I'm going to sit here and say that I think Nick Chubb is very, very close right behind him. Like, he is a very close number two. And I think that, this year is going to determine whether or not, you can have Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb neck and neck. But to your argument, like his durability standpoint, and I know that you're going to bring that up when you talk about Chubb as well. But the fact is that he's been in the league for only 2 years. By Chubb's third year is when he got his injury that he missed for 4 games, and then last year for only 2. But like, I think that in a durability standpoint, yes, only going into his third year, he is arguably the best running back in the league. And I think what he has and what he can bring to the table, shows it.
Even with Jonathan Taylor's workload, still averaging 5.5 yards per carry is impressive in and of itself. Now, you already mentioned your number two with Nick Chubb, and I'm going to be right there with you. I totally agree. Nick Chubb at number two for the exact same purpose as I did for Jonathan Taylor. Efficiency-wise, Nick Chubb is almost as good, if not better, than Jonathan Taylor. I mean, really it is, because Nick Chubb gets 100 less rushes than Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor does every year, but yet still puts numbers that are relatively close to theirs. I mean, he runs at the same efficiency as a Jonathan Taylor. He's way more efficient than Derrick Henry. So, and like you said, other than last year, Nick Chubb has been like either number one or number two in broken tackles every single season since he's been pre-named a starter for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, last year the top three were Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and Javonte Williams from the Broncos. Obviously, Chubb didn't play quite as much as he could have, missed quite a few games last season. I thought that was the only reason. 3. Yeah.
He missed 2 to an injury, 1 to COVID.
Yeah. And then and that's probably the only other reason why I'd put him below Jonathan Taylor at this point. And because I think Jonathan Taylor has the potential to be a better receiving threat than Nick Chubb, just because the only problem is Nick Chubb doesn't get utilized a lot in that way. That's more of a Kareem Hunt thing. But nevertheless, I agree Nick Chubb should be number two based off of efficiency and what he does when he actually is on the field. And I think you and I both have the same guy here at number 3, Derrick Henry. Obviously, they crowned him the king for a reason. I mean, he continues to just throw people around. I mean, that stiff arm of his has become a thing of legend. Just the workload that this guy brings it into the Tennessee Titans offense. I mean, it's hard to find a guy who's 6'2", 245 pounds that can run the way he does. I mean, it's incredible. The speed, the power, and the consistency this guy shows. I mean, he just runs forward fast, and he's going to get 2 or 3 yards on pretty much every run that he gets. So, what can you say about Derrick Henry? But number 4, who's your number 4? We saw Jonathan Taylor number 1, Nick Chubb 2, Derrick Henry 3. Who's your number 4?
I'm gonna let you go through your list, and then I'll give you all of mine and the explanations on behind everything.
You want me to go through the whole thing, or you want me to just give you mine first so you can kind of piggyback?
Give me your top 6, and then I'll go through my 6, and then we'll finish off with 4, our last
5,
4.
and 6. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Dalvin Cook for me. Dalvin Cook at number 4 because what we've seen from him when he is healthy and he is on the field, he continues to put on a clinic in many games. Like there are games he literally will take over and you just don't even realize it because the talk is all about Justin Jefferson, right? Or talking about how trash Kirk Cousins is, right? But we don't talk about the fact that Dalvin Cook is one of only 2 running backs in the NFL that have over the last 5 seasons have multiple 3+ touchdown games and multiple seasons. So this guy is the workload that you want for a running back. He does everything for you. So number 4, Dalvin Cook for me. Number 5, I'll go Christian McCaffrey. Now I know that might be a little high, but because of the injuries, look at everything else. But when Christian McCaffrey is on the field, he is the best dual threat running back in the NFL when he's on the field. I mean, that's the problem. That's why he's not in the top 3, because he's not on the field a lot of times. But this guy, ever since he's gotten into the NFL, people kept saying his game will not translate to the NFL. Sure enough, first 2 years in the NFL, this guy had 2,000 scrimmage yards and made it look easy, did it in 13 games. So like he does these things and he makes it look easy. He can not only run in between the tackles, but he's outside of maybe Eckler and Hines and maybe Kamara, you could talk about him being up there with the best receiving backs of all of them. He's definitely a threat to score every time he touches the ball. So that's why he's a number 5 for me. And then number 6, I'm going to go Alvin Kamara. So Alvin Kamara here, he's not a great running back. He's not, I mean, obviously he gets his yardage, but running back is no longer just a running scenario anymore. It's just not all of what it entails. And not to mention, again, he had 6 touchdowns in a game before. Okay.
Right.
I can't ignore the fact that this guy can change a game like that. The problem I have with putting anyone above him at this moment is I don't know if there's another running back below him that changes the game the way Alvin Kamara does it. That's the only reason I put him here, is because Alvin Kamara versus the rest of the guys on this list that I have, he just makes plays that makes you garner attention to him. And that's the problem. It's like, again, he's not the best pure runner. Obviously, if I wanted to mention pure runner, I could probably put about 5 different running backs better as a running back than him. But if we're talking about the whole package here, we have to include it nowadays because that's how it is in the NFL. Alvin Kamara, when you look at him in the backfield for the Saints, you always have to game plan for him more than some of these other guys. And that's why I have him at 6. So Dalvin Cook 4, Christian McCaffrey at 5, Alvin Kamara at 6.
Okay. For me, I've got JT at 1, Nick Chubb at 2. And for those of you that are, going to question why I have him over Henry, like Derek said, he's had over 100 or more carries less than what Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry have had, and he's been putting up over 1,000 yards ever since his second year in the league. Like more than 1,000. Yeah. And in 2020 he started 12 games, put up 1,089, finished 3rd in the league in rushing. Last year he missed 3 games, 2 to a hamstring injury, and then 1 due to COVID, and he put up 1,205 yards on just like 190 carries. Like, you're telling me 190? What other running back do you know in the league that can get 1,205 yards on 190 carries? You don't see that very often.
It's just only Jonathan Taylor probably has the ability to do that.
Wait, he didn't.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying has the ability. Derrick Henry doesn't. But Jonathan Taylor would be the only running back that I could see having the ability to do that.
And the argument for Derrick Henry is he's played in a AFC South division that had 2 crappy defenses.
2 very crappy run defense.
Yeah, 2 very crappy run defenses.
They're bottom of the league. They're both bottom of the league.
Which is part of the reason why in 2019 Henry won the rushing title, because Houston rested all their starters, and not
He's
to mention he
he's
got
averaging
250 yards.
175 yards per game in that.
Right, right. And the thing with Chubb is he's had over 5.5 or more yards per carry since he was deemed the starter. He's also done more with less, and like yes, he competes with Alvin Kamara, and he's able to be a good receiving back. I have seen countless games where he has caught passes like it's nothing. It's just they don't utilize him like that because when you've got a guy like Kareem Hunt who's versatile in both running and receiving, and you have him out there, you never know what he's gonna do. Like Chubb's capable of receiving, they just don't use him that way. But like
Right.
I got the first three are the same for me. Actually, first four. I've got Dalvin Cook at 4 as well.
Okay.
Because this man gets overlooked all the time. And he's like Chubb. He's missed quite a few games and still gets, over 1,000 yards a season. And yes, overall total yards are not not the number one thing that you measure in a running back, and a lot of people seem to think that is, but it's not. If that was the case, Derrick Henry would be number one every year. But
Mm-hmm.
overall total yards is not how you do it. You measure by yards per carry, you measure by their carries, you measure yards after contact, broken tackles, things like that. And the two people that have led in yards after contact and broken tackles in the past few years is Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb. Yards after contact and broken tackles. Let that sink in. Now, Dalvin Cook is also, he gets overlooked because he's on a team with Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, like you said. But his play on the field has shown it. Now, my number 5 is different. I actually am giving this guy respect that he deserves, and I think that this last season kind of, showed it for me. Like, I was very borderline with this guy, Derek, and it was like very tough, and I had to go back and watch film, and I was battling back and forth between CMC and this guy, and who I have at number 5 is Joe Mixon.
Oh
Joe
my
Mixon.
gosh.
I've got
Oh my
I've
gosh,
got Joe
bro.
Mixon at 5.
Okay, I want to hear this. I want to hear it. Bring it on.
Okay. Every year that he's played, he had one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year, and he
Mhm.
put up 1,200 yards. Let that sink in. That's pretty damn good for a crappy offensive line. He also has had over 500 or more receiving yards as a receiving back over the past 3 years. Not to mention, he gets overlooked because of being in a Cincinnati offense that was very pass heavy and didn't utilize Joe Mixon very much in running. But like he's had over 1,000 yards the past few years, and he's not that far behind everybody in yards after contact and yards per carry and everything. And I really think that the numbers are showing for Joe Mixon that he is a top 5 running back, if not borderline. Like I said, it was a very close, between him and CMC, and I've got
So I'm
CMC right
assuming
there
CMC is
at
at
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah, CMC is at 6. He's borderline 5 for me. Like you could swap these guys and not be wrong at all. Like you could
Okay.
swap both of these guys, and I would be okay with it. But I've got CMC at 6.
Okay.
You could make an injuries as a factor on why he's at 6, but that's not the reason. I think that yes, CMC, we've seen some of the single greatest seasons that we've had for a running back in terms of being able to receive the ball and run the ball and
Mhm.
being one of the most dual threat guys that we've seen in the past decade
Mhm.
play football. So I think that CMC, if he can stay healthy this year, will be back in the top 5. No question
Okay.
about it.
All right, I'll say I don't agree with Mixon at 5, but I do understand where you're coming at because of the fact that he has continuously gotten better. You could definitely make the argument after last season that Joe Mixon was a top 5 running back in the league because of him finishing. I think he was what, 3rd or 4th in rushing yards after that year, and that was with
Yeah,
Burrow doing what he did. So I mean, that's impressive.
and a
And like you
garbage O
said,
line.
that offensive line being garbage, all season, and yet, was able to do the things that he did. I mean, I would definitely give him. That's why I put him at 7 for myself, over a few other guys that I would say, because Yeah, Joe Mixon at 7 makes a lot of sense to me. He has continuously gotten better. He
So,
has
Derek, do you
been
want to know where he was in the leading rushers last year?
Sure, I want to hear it. I thought it was
He
third or
was
fourth.
he was third. Okay, the first three or first four was Jonathan Taylor 1811, Nick Chubb 1259, Joe Mixon 1205, and Najee Harris 1200.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I definitely would give Mixon at 7 there. Like I said, I think he is getting better. And I think he's really starting to turn into a much more complete running back that is not getting left in the dust as much as he used to. So, who's your number 7?
Alvin Kamara.
Alvin Kamara? Okay. All right.
I've got Kamara at 7, and I get a lot of hate for this, especially like when I do TikToks about it, when I talk about him and everything, and like everybody always asks why. And when you're a running back in the NFL, rushing is your key job. If you were there to receive the ball, you might as well just convert to a receiver. Yes, I can understand your argument saying like the game's changing and you're receiving the ball more, but as a running back, you've got to be able to put up the rushing yards as well and be a threat. People are planning for him by putting DBs and linebackers with him at coverage because they're not worried about stacking the box because he's not a running threat. This guy has not had 1,000 yards rushing his entire career as a football player, and people put him in the top 5, and I don't understand that. Like that is, if you have not hit 1,000 yards rushing at not even a single time in your career, you do not deserve to be in a top 5, at least in my opinion. Like, and
Yeah, I agree.
that's why Mixon's better. That's why CMC is better because they mix that flow of catching the ball and being able to run the ball and be that threat and not being able to prepare for him. Because if you have Mixon or CMC, you don't know whether or not you have to stack the box or whether or not you have to have a linebacker go to coverage because they're out there being threatened by the receiving ability. You got Kamara out there, nobody's stacking the box against him because he's not a rushing threat. People
Mhm.
are starting to put an extra DB or an extra linebacker on the field just to cover him because that's all they see him as is like just an extra receiver.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. All right, number 8. I'm gonna go with Najee Harris from Pittsburgh. Now, I already got him up this high because last season as a rookie, we saw how good he was, and he led the NFL in broken tackles last year, and as a rookie, and he definitely was, I think, at times was stipulated by the way the Pittsburgh offense was running it. I think that he is a very versatile two-way running back who has power, who obviously was one of the best at yards after contact last year. And he has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and make plays in the open field. We saw him do it at Bama, and we saw him do it this year a few times as well. He's got some power behind him, too. I really think that if this Pittsburgh offense can find a better way to run their offense like more efficiently, Najee Harris is going to be a top 5 in total rushing yards running back almost every season. Almost every season, I think he has a shot at it. I mean, he is going to be up there with all these guys. And I think that's what puts him ahead of a few other people on this list is due to the fact that he has that dual threat ability. So Najee Harris for me is at 8.
Okay, okay. I see where you're coming from. It's not it's not too far fetched. In the AFC North, like that it ain't no slouch. If you got running backs in the AFC North putting up 1,000 yards or more, and breaking tackles like Chubb and Najee do and everything, like that's proof enough of itself because there's some good defenses in the AFC
Oh, yeah.
North. Unlike Derrick Henry, who's playing in the AFC South. You put
Keep
him in the
throwing
North,
shots. Keep throwing shots.
you put Henry in the North, he is not getting, or like
No,
he's
yeah,
barely getting
his
a
numbers
thousand.
go down a lot.
They go down drastically, but like I don't know, like I can't quite put him at 8. Like it's very difficult, but like he is a versatile guy who is very explosive and can do everything that you need. But I think that the one downfall that he is he's got too much of a stutter step. Too much of a
Yeah,
stutter step. And
that's
I
true.
don't know if you've seen it on the film or not, but like when he gets the ball, he hesitates for a second and then goes through the gap and into the hole.
That is
And
something that he will have to just learn as time goes along. I mean, even Jonathan Taylor, his first year, I mean, lacked that ability. I mean, his vision, what it is now, is nowhere near what it was his first year. First year, it was bad. And then when he finally caught on to the speed of the game, then it got scary. So maybe it's just taking Najee just a little bit more time to figure that out. It takes a little while, but who's your
right.
number eight?
And that
Who's your number eight?
but that's why I don't have him quite up there yet, because like I want to see what he can do this year. If
I
he
got you.
can put all of it together and be a lot better this year and like fix up his mistakes, because like also with people seeing film on him now, they might game plan for him a lot better and stop him, and his stats might go down, or they might continue to rise. Who knows? But my number 8 guy, regardless of the injury, and I also think it's because of the team that he plays on. You put him on the Colts, the Browns, the Titans. You put him on any other team but the team that he plays on, and he does significantly better, and that's Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
Saquon Barkley proved it his rookie year that, even with missing 3 games his rookie year, he still put up great numbers. Like yards after contact was great. Yards after catch was great. Yards per carry was probably a top 5 or top 7. And then not to mention he had an overall total yards of like 1100. I think his rookie, or no, actually it was 1300 because he was competing with Zeke Elliott that year.
Yeah.
For the league rushing. Then he tore his ACL the next year, so he went down. And then last year he had a couple injury, or no, his second year he had the hamstring injury, and then last year had the ACL tear. So yes, the injuries are riddling him. Yes, I think it's also because the Giants have a atrocious offensive line, and you put him on any team with a good offensive line, I bet he has probably one of the better years of his career so far. So I'm going with Barkley at 8. Who you got
Okay.
at 9?
I would not put him that high just simply due to the fact that he's had very little playing time over his first 3 years in the league. But I mean, I understand. I get where you're coming from with, the potential for Saquon Barkley is what sets him apart. I mean, we all knew he was special at Penn State. And after his first season with the Giants, we knew he was special. It's
He
just a
had high
matter of,
upside.
yeah, it's just a matter of, you hope that at some point he gets traded out of New York and maybe goes to a team that can actually help his ass play a little better. So, but I will say, do I still have you? There you go. I
Yeah.
was gonna say I thought I lost you for a minute there. All
Yeah,
right.
my Wi-Fi is kind of spotty, but who do you got at
Okay.
9?
Number 9, Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers. Aaron
Ooh.
Jones just deserves to be up on this list because he consistently puts up consistent numbers throughout the year. He always is around that 1,000-yard threshold. Even with the high-powered passing offense that Green Bay likes to run, Aaron Jones definitely adds a dynamic to Green Bay, and that's why he's so high on this list, because when you need to be a top 10, you need to add dynamic to your offense. And Aaron Jones, you can't ignore him if you're any defense, because Aaron Jones is just that good. You can't just say, well, we're going to just ignore the rushing game. We're going to focus on Aaron Rodgers. You can't do that because Aaron Jones is going to drop 150 yards on you. He's going to get 2 touchdowns. So, Aaron Jones has that ability to do that. I wanted to put Jones higher, but with Joe Mixon having as great of a season as he did, and with Najee kind of showing me the potential he's got, I just couldn't put him higher. So I put Aaron Jones at 9.
Yeah, I was really high on Aaron Jones after the 2020 season. Like I had him at like 6 or 7, borderline top 5 because of what he was able to do with Green Bay. And I think Aaron Jones gets overlooked because like he has that dual threat ability of being able to catch and rush. And Green Bay kind of went away from the rushing game last year and kind of focused more on passing than they did rushing. So Aaron really didn't get his shot very much. He still put up 1,000 yards, but he probably could have had way more had they been focusing on rushing more. But my number 9 guy is Najee Harris. I
Okay.
have Najee at number 9 because I wanted to put him at 10, but honestly, with the stats that he had last year, and because me personally, I don't like to rank rookies very high unless they've
Yeah.
been astronomically ascended and have adjusted to the game drastically over their first season. And, that's why I was hesitant to put Justin Herbert in the top 10 after his rookie year, even though he put up, amazing numbers. But now he's in the argument is he a top 5 QB? But, Najee, I really wanted to keep him at 10 just because, with him being a rookie and just being in the NFL. But his stats kind of warranted him at the number 9 spot. I wanted to put him higher, but I want to see more of what he can do.
I
Is it
understand.
a 1-year fluke? Can people that are seeing the film on him adjust to what he's doing and stop him? Or is he going to continue to get better? Is he going to fix that stutter step and lock down his vision more and hit the hole harder? Is he going to take that first step and make the person miss and then go to the right? Those are the things I want to see from him before I can actually put him drastically higher on this list. Is he
I get you.
capable of being 7 or 6? Yes, but
Yeah.
not right now.
Okay. Number 10 for you. Rounding out
Aaron
the list.
Jones.
What
Aaron
is it?
Jones.
Aaron Jones? Okay. All right.
I've got
Just
him. I've
cracking
got
it.
him at
Okay.
10. I got him
Okay.
at 10 just because just because of what I said. He was kind of overlooked last year. They had a down year in rushing, and I think that he does need the respect because he's a good running back.
I get you. I get you. I'll be honest here, Chase. At 10, I had such a hard time with this spot. I honestly could give an argument for 4 different running backs at this spot. I could
Same,
honestly give
and
4.
a couple of those 4 is Josh Jacobs. You can give that argument for. You can give that argument for Zeke. You can give that argument for even Miles Sanders if you wanted to,
You
and
could give
Austin
it
Eckler.
for, I mean, for me also, I thought about Austin Eckler as well, just from the
Yep, that was
versatility
the 4th guy. Yep.
aspect. I wouldn't quite put Javonte Williams up there yet. Needs to crack 1,000 yards before I could tell him on that. But
Yeah, I wouldn't put
I'll,
him in there either.
you know, you've inspired me for this. I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley here at 10, just simply due to the fact that you're right. The potential for a Saquon Barkley rebound is just it's high. And the player, I know the player, if he doesn't get hurt, I mean, this guy is top 5 talent wise when it comes to running backs, just needs to put it all together. So I mean, our list was not too far off, I mean, I thought there would be a little bit more separation. There was a little bit from 5 on, but the first 4, you and I are in stride there with each other.
Yeah, we both had Taylor, Chubb, Henry, and Cook, and I'm waiting for the comments to come out and their arguments for why we didn't put Henry at
Yeah, why we
1.
didn't put Henry at 1. I'll tell you why, because he's not as good. Okay, so just suck on it. All right. Well, that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for this one, guys. Thank you all for tuning into the podcast. Let us know your thoughts on the Watson news, on all the other NFL news going on, the Baker Mayfield trade. Talk about our top 10 running backs. Let us know your thoughts on the top 10 list, who you think should be in, who you think should be out. But let us know what your thoughts are. Thank you guys for tuning in, and have a great night.